10x your service design offering with Smaply. Take 20% off any order with This Is HCD 20 off. Let's superpower you and your design team's potential. Sign up at smaply.app. Enjoy the episode from your friends at Smaply, helping support This Is HCD podcast.
I remember standing in an emergency department and it was so busy. I was holding a unit of blood in my left hand and I had a bedpan in the crook of my arm. I was holding 2 patients' notes, platelets in the other side, something bananas. Like if someone asked me to hold something, I couldn't, right? I was absolutely maxed out and somebody handed me the phone to answer a patient query. And I remember just starting to cry. And there was 3 people waiting to ask me questions. And I remember just going, guys, what am I meant to do here?
Hello and welcome to This Is HCD. My name is Jerry Scullion and I'm a designer, educator and the host of This Is HCD, based in the wonderful city of Dublin, Ireland. Now, our goal here is to have conversations that inspire and help move the dial forward for organisations to become more human-centred in their approach to solving complex business and societal problems. Now, I caught up recently with Sarah Kearns, a nurse from Dublin, Ireland. And myself and Sarah connected through a mutual desire to create a new service to reward their incredible nurses, alongside the incredibly talented Amy Huberman in Ireland. And all 3 of us are working on a project at the moment called Thank You Nurses. More on that later on in this episode. But anyway, you'll hear real life stories from Sarah and what life was like during the global pandemic and how hard these incredible people work on a day-to-day basis. I wanted to shine a light on this area of society where the work that we do as system and service designers has often a direct relationship with life and death. Now, I don't say this lightly, but Sarah really is truly one of my heroes. But they all are, and I know you're going to love this episode. Now, if you like what we're doing at This Is HCD, please help us out by leaving a review wherever you listen to the podcast. It only takes a couple of minutes and really helps in the findability. Now, did you know that 70% of you listening have not subscribed to the little bell on Spotify or followed on Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts? So please take the time to follow this podcast on whatever platform you're doing at the moment. It really helps us. Now, if you want to go one better, you can become a patron and you can get an ad-free stream of the podcast for as little as €1.66 per month and also get a shout out as thanks. And there's other plans there where you can get exclusive items too. And as I said, literally all the money goes towards directly to editing and hosting and maintaining our website, which is now a repository for design goodness with over 230, nearly 240 episodes, folks. Anyway, let's jump in. Sarah Kearns, a very warm welcome to This Is HCD. How is it going?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Sarah, we've connected over the last 6 months or so. You're based in Ireland, but you've got an interesting current role at the moment where you're working at LinkedIn. And we can cover off some of that at the moment. But what we're really interested in, that's no sort of slant against LinkedIn, we're interested in your previous career as a nurse. So maybe tell us a little bit about how long you practiced as a nurse and where you practiced as a nurse and what area were you working in as a practitioner?
So I was a nurse for 14 years. I trained in you remember the Adelaide used to be in the centre of Dublin with all the spotty uniform, it was fab. But they moved out to Tala and they joined the Meath Hospital, they moved out to Tala. So I trained as a nurse in 2003 to 2007 out there, and I worked in the emergency department after that. There for a year, and I went to Australia. I lived in Australia and I worked in the Alfred Hospital and a bit in the Epworth in Melbourne. I did that for about a year. And then since then I have worked predominantly in emergency departments on and off, and I trained as a midwife, and I have just finished up my career, but for the moment I'm taking a bit of a hiatus, but in the intensive care unit in Vincent's Hospital. So I've been, I've just finished a maternity leave and I've just taken a little bit of a step away just for the moment. But I was in the ICU for most of the pandemic, maybe half of the pandemic. And then I went off and had a baby.
Right. There's so much to unpack there. Yeah, I love the way you just, like in a typical nurse,
over it.
You provide so much value in a very short amount of time. You're just like boom, 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 boom. So you're a midwife, you've worked in ICU, you've worked in all these different spaces. Now, the primary listener to This Is HCD are design practitioners or change makers, people who want to try and evoke change to make positive impact for humans, who are working in business or society. Okay, so people listening here would be really interested to see how design actually came into your role. Like, how did you see improvements happen within the hospital space over your time? Because you mentioned that I think you qualified in 2004, was that right?
2003. I started my training in 2007. I finished it. It was a 4-year degree program.
Okay.
There's been so much change. It's so interesting. And then when actually seeing Irish nursing in comparison to Australia was a really big eye opener. Like, for example, well, what's funny, we'll go back to it later on, but like the fact that I'm in LinkedIn, I was laughing because, you know, like even the technology, if you think about technology that we use in medicine or in nursing is new. So it's so incredible and efficient and easy, predominantly so, particularly like the platform that we used in the intensive care unit was so user friendly and so easy. You could get your head around it and the amount of data that it used so efficiently, it was extraordinary. But like when I started my nursing training, that was on it. We used to have one of an A3 piece of paper. And that's where you kept all your information. But then I suppose nursing and technology go hand in hand, it is really interesting because in some ways, I remember typing at a desk. People think when you sit and you type at the end of a patient's bed, you're kind of nearly on Google and taking a bit of a break. But when you're physically writing a note, you'll be like, I'll be with you again. I see you're busy, nurse.
Really?
But I don't think it's the same if you're, so there, I don't know. And there is that kind of, the ICU is amazing, but even when it comes to anything, when I started my training, there was a lot of healthcare attendants in particular and a few nurses that still wore the dresses, like who didn't wear trousers on a daily basis. And even we were wearing these tunics and trousers and they looked smart, but they were so uncomfortable. They were fitted tunics and that has sort of evolved. They still wear them, but a lot of, they'd get them refreshed and designed every couple of years. But then most of my career since I qualified has been wearing scrubs, and they're not as smart, but they are so practical and so comfortable. And you're very, spillages and bodily fluids could end up on you at any of all calibers can end up on you during the day. So you can just do a change of uniform and it's easy.
Absolutely.
Scrub use.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been amazing. The changes in medicine in the last 14, 15 years has been extraordinary.
Let's talk about that. I'm just going to click something here for a sec where I'm going to record.
Recording in progress.
Some of the videos, because I might use some of your beautiful video to share some of the stuff out in social media. So over the last 14 years, as you said, there's been such a shift because you were there just at the drop of the iPhone, okay, and that typically is kind of a shift. Something happened, just before, like 2007, the drop of the iPhone. I think I'm right anyway. People would be like, "No, Jerry, it was 2006." I think it was 2007. Things started to change a little bit more. And we were just chatting there before around palliative care and ICU experiences that I've had over the number of years. My father died 2 years ago, and we had to have that whole kind of connection and use of technology to bring other family members in because it was during the pandemic. What was the single biggest change that you noticed in that period where technology was suddenly being brought into the room, so to speak? And you mentioned there about the A3 piece of paper. When you look back in it, what are your thoughts at that time? Like, are there any anecdotes that you can tell us what it was like in that shift?
Well, you're very close to the patient when you had your A3 piece of paper and you're at the end of the bed and you stand or you'd bring a stool over and you'd write the notes and you always had your eye on the patient. You're very much so with the patient. And I think the shift to technology, potentially not in the intensive care unit, but if you can imagine, if you physically write notes, you can bring them, you can write them sitting on the patient's bed, sitting on the chair beside the patient. It's all very inclusive, but the move away to technology, we haven't quite caught up because I think that, there could be a computer in the nurse's station, which may be in the next room over to the patient's room, that sort of thing. So I don't think we're quite there yet. The first time I ever used technology on a day-to-day, like on a ward level, I was in a private hospital in Dublin. And they had it, and we had there was a lot of laughter around it because it was Computer on Wheels, the cow, and like everyone like rolling around laughing, but like for about a year saying, would you move over your cat? Like it was brilliant. But that was my first, but it was a kind of an arduous platform. Like it was just really sort of hard. And what was interesting for me is going from written notes where you would really get in depth, you'd be in a flow and you're typing away. And I think that probably notes got shorter. I don't know where. I'd love to look back at the data. It was such a change in how we even wrote about our patients throughout the day. I don't know, were we missing any particular detail, but now it is, particularly in the intensive care unit. So our monitors hook up now to computers that are in every room and onto this gorgeous platform. Everything, just the flow is so easy. And you can, if you could imagine the physical tracking, which would have been done like from joining dots in a temperature, sort of like it looks like the top of a mountain range, that is now all plotted out for you. So it is definitely improved, medical note taking massively so. But it has been bizarre. When you're saying the iPhone, the first time I ever came across an iPhone when I was traveling in Australia in 2008. But when I was in college, there was none. We were on Nokia somethings. I think we were able to take crappy pictures because I remember being at a party in Trinity, and the Phil in Trinity had invited Paddy Cosgrave was involved in this, inviting over Ron Jeremy, the porn star.
Yeah, we do. Well, no, I mean, I don't.
The eyes wide. It was actually the most interesting talk. I know he's there a lot of come out recently about him just not being great, but it was fascinating. There had been a recent outbreak in HIV in the porn industry, and he gave big talk. It was amazing. But we had Sharpies and we got him to sign the top of our chest. Ron was here. We were taking pictures on a crappy.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I need to have a disclaimer on this episode with Sarah Kearns. Sarah Kearns is absolutely hilarious. We've met up in person and had a lot of laughs. I want to ask you.
My dad relieved he didn't know who he was.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Like I just feigned interest. Come here. You mentioned there about the iPhone and you had Nokias and stuff like that. But when you look back at that period, and also now, like up until recently, within the last 18 months, you were working as a nurse, like in Irish hospitals and in the ICUs. What have we lost through the introduction of technology into the systems of healthcare? What do you feel we've lost?
Well, certainly as an absolute basis, I think there is that extra level of anxiety, possibly privacy. And because I was in Temple Street with my littlest after febrile seizure on Wednesday, and on the walls they have signs everywhere going, please no recording or video, taking videos inside the department, and they're all over the walls. And if you can imagine what I took a picture of Theo in my arms, right? A selfie Theo to reassure my husband, whatever, look at his colours and proof, blah. But when you think about it, what if I took a picture of somebody accidentally, or even, do you know, a huge part of it? There was a story, that element of privacy, people taking photographs of me in my work day, potentially, and people maybe putting it up on Facebook. This was the nurse that was looking after me, because medical litigation and everything, if you could think even that element of things, I think that it is unnerving. And we were talking about an incident of a famous person being caught snogging someone, not caught, but like filmed snogging someone on last weekend, and that element of privacy being gone. What I think in some ways social media has been the best thing to happen in society, but has also been the worst. When I do know of a case that there was a perceived error made by a healthcare member, and a photograph of them was taken. Somebody knew their name. You can just put their name into Facebook. Oh, there they are. They were in Lanzarote last week. And then a post put up about them. This person did X, Y, and Z, has resulted in these adverse reactions. And it's sort of, I remember being this particular incident was about a midwife, and I remember thinking, God, that is just, it's no jury, trial, just all social media, it's just around. So that element of privacy is gone. However, definitely, in COVID. It was fascinating and amazing to have technology. For example, there was so many times, if you think about the first wave, I was there for the first and halfway through the second wave, I was pregnant with my third baby. So we were all sent home. Do you remember that at Christmas 21?
Yeah.
We were sent home because it was so dangerous.
Yeah.
You had to be pregnant at that time. And it was a really savage, that second wave of COVID was really savage, and healthcare members got sick. It was around the Christmas. Remember, the vaccines came in mid-January. So all the healthcare members were to top the queue, and they were, there was a bit of safety brought in with the vaccine. But if you think about it, there was, remember at the beginning, and for particularly first or second wave, you were close contact, you had to isolate and all that sort of stuff. It's still the same now, right? But as a result, we had, like, nurses in general or whatever would all tell you probably stories of the same thing, that there be patients that were dying, but because they're close, it didn't matter if they were a daughter or a cousin or whatever. It didn't matter how close they were to the person. If they were close contact, they couldn't come into the hospital.
That's right.
So there was incredibly awful stories of people dying and their daughter couldn't come in, or their whoever. I just can't even. But as a result, we were then on WhatsApp video calling, and I used my own personal phone on millions of occasions where people wanted to bring because it's lovely seeing someone, or even someone maybe that they've just recently woken up, or
I noticed that.
It's lovely to see someone.
I noticed that an awful lot. But I just want to take you back to what we were talking there about social media and data. Okay, so one of the biggest instances in Irish kind of recent history is the Vicky Phelan case, where Vicky Phelan was, she went through this whole kind of litigation process with the government. She found her notes at the end of her bed, or by the consultant, I think it was, and it showed that she had been presented back with false records. Is that right, on her smear tests?
It was like by chance finding of her. She read her medical notes and discovered that they were aware that she had got a false negative on her smear test
several years before.
By chance, So in maternity, this is a really interesting topic, and I'm no expert, and I don't, but I happily give my opinion on this.
Yeah.
In maternity care, you have access to your notes. Now, this has changed since COVID, and I'm unsure. It's all gone to, I know in a lot of the maternity hospitals, they've now gone onto the computer system. But traditionally, you took your notes home with you, and you took them back in for your appointments. And it makes the flow of coming to regular appointments easier, because if you think, right, so you have an outpatient's appointment. So a Dr. X is holding their clinic for their patients, okay? In order for him to have, or her to have, all the information on the patients, they basically make a list of how everyone's coming, and then someone goes down to the whatever room and picks up the medical notes and then brings them up, and they have the stack of medical notes waiting for people, Mrs. X or Mr. whoever, to come in. The doctor takes the chart and has a look, and the nurses write the notes. The flow is a lot easier when somebody takes home their notes themselves, then just brings it back into clinic, except when you forget it, which is a bit of a disaster.
Yeah. When you say they, you mean the doctors or the consultant takes the notes home?
No, the patient.
The patient takes the notes home.
That was traditionally how it did. So you would have your notes with you all the time. So when you came in labour, and actually that was sort of an interesting thing, because, well, not that you'd have it away, but that has all been changed since COVID. So they weren't
giving the notes out.
Giving notes out because, they were saying that, COVID was obviously transmissible through surfaces and all that sort of stuff. That had changed. But here's the counter argument to it. I think that people should have access to the medical records 100%. And what happened, Vicky Phelan, should not have happened. And everything about that was wrong. But here's the interesting thing. What if I, as a midwife or a nurse, needed to write a piece of information that, for example, that I suspected domestic abuse. So there's, or some information about somebody that was really integral, that was really sensitive, but really important, is so private. Where do the notes fit into that? And that's where the technology is good, because they can have, or for example, if I'm a staff member and I'm going into hospital for a procedure, and I have type 1 diabetes and I'm really public about it. But what if I didn't want people to know about that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just say I'm having a procedure and maybe in the hospital that I work in, and people just imagining that people
private notes.
They never would. Yeah, private notes, and they're reading them. So there is that element of privacy. So I wonder, now I know that when it is if a staff member or somebody who is extra private notes, that extra layer of privacy, you have to do it, and your staff member trying to get into another staff member's note, it'll be restricted. So they have brought in things, but I think through that transition, I wonder what slipped through the net.
Who would own the data in that instance? How do you see that fitting in? Would it be at the hospital level, or would it be at a government level, or would it be at your health provider level, like VHI or LA? Or who do you see as being? Obviously, it would be great if the patient was able to own it, like if there was some sort of system there.
The hospital, I'm pretty sure that it's the hospital for a certain period, and then they are obliged to hold on to it. That's why you see a lot of cases, for example, litigation cases taken against hospitals, but they're obliged to hold on to notes for a certain length of time, 25 years.
And probably with GDPR as well.
But I think it has opened up, because you should have full access to your medical notes. But then the interesting thing is that, you should have full access, but I think there has to be education brought in to having access, because there could be blood tests, just saying, run as, when you go in, you say, hey, doctor or nurse, I have a pain in my tummy. The differential diagnosis is wide open. It could be from anything from you're constipated up to you have cancer. So it could be, or an aneurysm or something serious. So there could be a wide differential of diagnosis. And actually, that's where it's sort of that discovery, that questioning is the same in sales. You need to get down to the root cause of the problem. But, if you had access to your notes and you see somebody's doing cancer bloods, you should know why somebody's doing a blood test on you. But then there's that level of fear, and not everyone wants to know. The amount of people, I think there could be massive amounts of gray areas. But I do think that technology, the idea that I could be in Donegal on my summer holidays, and I'm found collapsed, right? I'm brought in, they find my name is Sarah Kearns, and they go on to some sort of nationwide database. They type in Sarah Kearns, they come up with, and they're able to see then and there that I have type 1 diabetes. That's transformative in terms of healthcare.
That is something that can happen right now. Is that what you're saying?
No, they're working towards it. That national database. Yeah.
I mean, from my own personal case, this year has been a rotten year for me, folks. My mum got COVID in June and had COVID complications, everything that everyone does not want to hear when you're the youngest child. I'm very close to my mum, and I had to basically intervene with the hospital and be the next of kin. And it was the people in Beaumont Hospital were just out of this world, the angels. Okay. And that's ultimately why myself and yourself are connected through Amy. We're working on something which we can talk a little bit more about in a minute. But the whole experience of dealing with people in Beaumont, and then saying, okay, moving between the wards, and the wards have got notes, and then the files passing to another ward, and then me trying to get access to the information and staying on them, because obviously it's still COVID and the system is under immense pressure. But then luckily my mum made somewhat of a recovery and had to go to a recuperation place, another incredible place called Clontarf Hospital in Ireland. And the notes were in Beaumont. We were waiting for the notes to be carried across. And it just felt like, even my mum was kind of like, well, we just have to wait, because this is the system. We can't change this right now. It seems like some parts of it around data is still living in the dark ages. It's still living in the whole kind of the paper-based scenario of physically writing notes and passing it across. Yeah. How do you see that evolving?
We need every GP practice, and a lot of GP practice, for example, which is a really good example, are owned by a company, Centric Health. So they would run, not necessarily owned, but they would be in, working together. So a lot of those notes are, imagine a place that I present to the emergency department, with a child, and my child with information, and we can see the last 5 times that they've arrived. But we need every hospital, every institution, everyone to be up and running on a computer system that can all work together, and now we'll have a national database. And like it'll take more time, but it needs to be the way it's going to go. And like when up until recently, if somebody had a CAT scan, just say somebody came in and they suspected or they seen that somebody had a brain bleed, they needed the specialist, doctors would, for example, be in Beaumont. So we would have to call a taxi to put a CD with a scan on it into the taxi, and the taxi man would drive the scan over to Beaumont Hospital at 2 or 3 a.m. during the day, whatever.
Yeah.
But now the systems are centralized, so there's a huge, on part, not in all cases, but like there's a huge development in technology. Technology is the key to healthcare. It's what's driving it forward, but it's just a slow, expensive, arduous system.
I want to go back just a little bit earlier in this conversation where I was talking about what have we lost from a human perspective from the nurses level who are at the bedside. What have we lost and what have we gained by the introduction of technology from the human perspective, the human interaction level? Okay, so do you feel it's easier to do your job with technology now to provide a more human experience, or do you feel we kind of lost some elements to that? Where do you think?
I think predominantly it's been for the better, and I think because I think that you have more time with the patient if it's easier to take somebody's temperature, or they have a temperature probe that's continuously monitoring. It means that you don't have to go find a temperature probe. Is there batteries in it? Do I need the caps at the top of the tympanic or whatever, all these systems. And the easier those things become, the more time you have with the patient. I think that bedside time with the patient is integral to somebody's recovery. And generally speaking, nurses, because of who nurses are, they want to be with the patient at the bedside and they see the importance. But here's the actual crux of it, and it's not even by technology. Things are so busy now.
Yeah.
It is extraordinarily difficult.
Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. I remember standing...
Breaking point level. Okay.
Oh, breaking point. I remember standing in an emergency department. And it was so busy. I was holding a unit of blood in my left hand, and I had a bedpan under my left, in the crook of my arm. I was holding 2 patients' notes, platelets in the other side, something bananas. Like I literally couldn't, if someone asked me to hold something, I couldn't, right? I was absolutely maxed out, and somebody handed me the phone to answer a patient query. And I remember just starting to cry, and I was like, guys, and there was 3 people waiting to ask me questions. And I remember just going, guys, what am I meant to do here? How am I meant to cope with this? How does the people know how busy they are, but you're just meant to cope. You're just meant to cope.
Yeah.
That tiredness, the exhaustion is just I worked in the ICU, and the sickest patients are getting sicker. We're living longer. There's more comorbidities. People are, there's loads of so much with the obesity, with everything. Like there's so many issues towards people getting sick. They've never been sicker. And technology is obviously a huge part of that.
Yeah.
But actually, when you think about the nurses at the ward level in particular, at breaking point, they would be. I remember these stories of some wards that nurses wouldn't have got a toilet break. They'd have to bring the phone with them to the toilet. Like you wouldn't be able to. So, imagine trying to have a drink during the day, and at 3 p.m. in the day, they may not have had a break for a cup of tea or something to eat. It is relentless. I do not know how, I'm on a career break for the first time. I didn't realize how exhausted I was until I took a career break. It's an unbelievably challenging, but it's a brilliant career and it's so interesting. I never talk negative about it. It's the best thing I ever did to be a nurse, but it is just so hard. I think ultimately the better technology and take away those little mini tasks of trying to find this and that. And like, if you think about taking a blood pressure, if anyone's ever been in hospital, the nurse has gone around and trying to find a plug socket to charge the blood pressure monitor. So if all that is gone and they're just above the bed in a constant plug socket, like all of those little arduous tasks will work out better.
On that, my mum was back in Beaumont there last week, the week before, maybe to get some x-rays done. Again, post-COVID related, and they were there for 14 hours. Okay, my mum's 81, and but she didn't bat an eyelid. My mum's incredible in that sense. She was just like, well, there's other people here who are sicker than me. She kept on saying, I was like, Ma'am, you're 81. But she's incredible. I know, yeah, but when you've been in hospital for 5 months like my mum was, they change perspective on a lot of things. But they said that there was nurses, and my mom does not exaggerate, folks. They're not like me. Okay, they were sprinting. She said they were sprinting at 2:00 in the morning from room to room. She goes, it wasn't even a case of like walking briskly. These guys and folks were just absolutely, full tilt for so long, and I don't know how they can continue doing this. Like, so every little helps, like, Sarah, I know we're probably coming close to time on this episode, but one of the things that you mentioned there was the shift from being completely burnt out. What advice do you give to people who are designing in the healthcare space at the moment, who are interested in learning more about, I guess, making things a little bit easier for the people, the practitioners like yourself in that space? What are the things that you can really tell them where you feel they can improve on?
I think that I know that the term user friendly is really out there, but if you think about in particular like an Apple, what makes Apple, you know more than this about this than me, but that term user friendly I think is probably overused, but I really mean it in this. If you think about nurses and doctors, it's extraordinary. So you have a nurse that may be 21 from Clontarf in Dublin, went to right up to 65 from maybe Central Africa, who's lived in Ireland for 20 years, whatever. And across multi, like I don't know how many. I think somebody said at some stage in Vincent's Hospital there was like 70 nationalities. Something really incredible. Wow, right?
Yeah,
incredible. So the languages, the age, the culture backgrounds, the everything. So when you're designing, I think, when you're designing a product that people get to choose, right? So if you're designing 2 phones, okay, people are going to come and they have a choice. When you are coming to designing healthcare products, people don't have a choice. They're given them, and they're like, this is what you have to use, right? So if you take into consideration, you might have a 21-year-old whiz kid, or they might be dyslexic or whatever, right up to somebody's older who may be still on a Nokia 2210. So you need to make it to that extent user friendly. It's so much about graphics, and color coordination, clear big tabs, not overly busy platform pages, as user friendly as possible. I think that's hugely important because of the culture diversity. It's just enormous in hospitals.
It needs to be able to be adaptable as well to those.
Adaptable.
Multilingual.
Absolutely. It's multilingual and easily, like top right, you want this in Spanish, whatever, top right, a translation tool, that would make a huge difference. Imagine there was so some people would, a translation tool that was really easy to find on the page, because if you think about the amount of people, like obviously English is going to be the first language in whatever hospital. If you're in France, it's going to be French, blah, blah, blah. But so as user friendly as possible. But imagine a space that someone is able to just use like a Google Translate-esque tool to find words easily. Like you're going to have far a higher caliber of note writing and things like that.
I saw that actually firsthand in Beaumont Hospital, people using Google Translate on the ward, because we had people from other nationalities sitting in there, and they weren't able to communicate between the doctors and the patient. So, but again, I think it wasn't even the doctor's phone. I think it was someone else who was just in the ward, gave him the phone, said, we can do this. It was a kind of a crowd or a hustle mentality of, we're all here to try and help. We all want to get the same outcomes for everyone in the room. And I think I even went over at one point and I was like, hey, do you want me to try and use Google Translate? But they'd already got the phone in situations.
Imagine the GDPR implications of that.
Yeah.
So if you
they were telling me something.
You have a patient, it's unbelievable. So if you have a patient, for example, that's really sick and they have their family members in, maybe it's English, they don't speak English, we have to go through a translation company that's obviously verified and vetted, because you're potentially getting them to translate really, really sensitive information.
There's the parentification elements there. If the child has got the technology and they're more savvy than their parents, and they're privy to the health implications and the health data of their parent as well, and they're like, Mummy, you've got some serious stuff going on, and they're translating it back. It's quite difficult. Now, we were chatting there, we just mentioned a little bit on something that myself and yourself have come together and we're working on, like, and Amy as well, of course. I'll let you talk about it because you're spearheading this. I'm just sitting in the background kind of going, we could probably do it. One of the things when I was helping my mum, and my mum was kind of mum, whatever we want to call her, mum, mammy, the whole lot. She's a typical Irish mammy, and she said that when she was coming out of hospital, she sent my brother down with a wad of notes and said, this is what you need to buy. And I was the one who had to pick this order up, and there was 25 boxes of Cadbury's Heroes. There was several dozen big boxes of McVitie's biscuits, and I literally looked like a Santa Claus walking in through the ward, just dropping these chocolates as a way of giving back and thanking the people who are working in there. And that's how we've connected as well. So I'll let you take over and talk about where the idea of thank you nurses came from.
That's such a good idea. One thing that nurses absolutely love is an afternoon break. So when I have my babies or whatever that I bring back, I always bring in a cake.
Yeah.
For them to have with a cup of tea at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Absolutely lush. Like, couldn't think of anything nicer. Like a butler's coffee cake. Oh, the dream. There was a horrendous night in I suppose it's about 6 months ago, that there was the team in an emergency department, there was some children had died. It was a horrific night, and someone contacted Amy Huberman and said, who's a pal, and they said, like, she, is there anything, any chance that you would put up on your Instagram? I would absolutely love to get these girls and guys, whoever, tickets to see Gareth Brooks as sort of a way of thanking them, because they had really had a rough time. So, but Amy was so pleasantly surprised, because she was absolutely inundated with offers. People saying, hey, I've 5 Gareth Brooks tickets. If anyone, if you want them, you can give them away. So she basically, someone got involved and helped her, and people were suggesting that they had tickets for all sorts of gigs and things. So then we said, wouldn't we love to do this as a sort of a general thing? So we're calling it Thank You Nurses, and we're going to focus on nurses because we will expand as we go, but as a really good starting point, we're going to focus on nurses and the concept and the idea. Jerry contacted Amy as well. That's how I met you, and said, listen, I can do the IT part, I can do the website and kind of the traffic control, whatever you need. So the three of us. So what we're going to do is basically have an Instagram page, a website, and what we're going to do is Amy's going to boost it. So she's going to say, hey guys, Temple Street is up this month. I'm going to put it on the Instagram page to say Temple Street ED is up this month. Tala Hospital will be maybe 2 weeks later or a month. We're trying to get into a good flow. And the idea would be that you would say, hey, I have 4 tickets to see Deirdre O'Kane. Brilliant. So you go onto the website, you log your information, tell us what you have, what you'd like to donate. And the idea is it's put through this flow, and the person, we're going to have a contact person in each hospital.
Yeah.
I've worked around Ireland. I think I have a contact person in every hospital. I'm going to link up with this. And the idea is there's going to be a contact hospital in, just say, South Tip, and they will say, brilliant. The person then, the information will go about the 4 Deirdre O'Kane tickets to the person in South Tip, and then they're going to give them out in the hospital to whoever they want.
Yeah. So connecting rewards.
It's a connecting rewards, yeah.
It's
just a simple thank you, isn't it?
Absolutely. Just to the nurses at the moment. That's what we're...
Just to the nurses. We will expand. We're going to focus on the teaching hospitals, the main teaching hospitals at the moment, just as a starting point. I think we will expand as we go because, the staff in Beacon Hospital in the bond that work so hard, and it's not a slight, it's just literally, it's like anything. We'll just start in the teaching hospitals, we'll get the vibe, we'll get the flow, and then we'll expand.
I love the fact you're using the lingo. I'm teaching you all these different, we'll iterate. We'll start small and, we'll do a small little sample and we'll see how it goes and we'll iterate. So it's a long-term project.
It's all sorts of tickets as well. We were saying it's just say you might have 4 tickets to a rugby match or a football match, or that you would like to see them go to waste, and that it's really simple. You come in because you have a really simple form.
I'm really simple. Is that what you're saying? How dare you? I'm not really simple.
User friendly. It's user friendly. You're user friendly. Yeah.
Well, we'll launch it probably in the new year. Okay, so and stay tuned, folks. I'll probably throw a link of it out into the newsletter for This Is HCD as well. But Sarah, I know it's a time for you, and I want to thank you for everything that you do. And on behalf of all the people who listen to this podcast, thanks for being so open and honest about your experiences and working as a nurse, especially during the pandemic. I said the word angel in there, and it's not something I throw around quite flippantly. Honestly, what one thing that has come out of the pandemic that I feel is the kind of the rebalancing, the recalibration of people in society who really need our deepest thanks. So from the bottom of my heart, I know I've had a lot of experience in sort of working and dealing with the healthcare in the last year in Ireland. All of you and your peers are absolutely incredible. So thank you so much for everything that you've done and continue to do for the Irish healthcare system. So that's from the bottom of my heart.
I will pass it on to the girls that are still working really hard. I don't know how they're incredible, particularly the girls in Vincent's ICU they're
amazing.
They are amazing. And as I was saying, that I was booted out halfway through the second wave, but the girls kept going day in, day out, in with really, really, really sick people with the hardest situations. Absolutely.
Well, look, I'll throw a link to your LinkedIn as well. So if anyone wants to connect with Sarah and ask questions, Sarah's on 2FM as well, regularly enough every Thursday with Jennifer Zamparelli. I'm saying the surname right? Jennifer Zamparelli. Yeah. So check in on 2FM if you want to stay up to date on what Sarah's doing. All right, Sarah, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks a million. Bye.
And there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you enjoyed it and want to listen to more, why not visit thisishcd.com, where you can learn more about what we're up to and also explore our courses whilst you're there. Thanks again for listening.